Hi, everyone. I'm about to welcome William Duguid into the studio. William is one of the organisers in the Independence Forum Scotland. Their summer convention is happening in a couple of weeks' time. It's all about Scotland's future. William's going to be talking to us a bit about the details of what's on offer on the programme, and it will be held in Perth this time. There's been one in Edinburgh. This one's in Perth, Saturday the 14th of June. So I'll just get William into the studio. Good. Okay, so let's get going. So William, it's really good to have you here, and yeah, we're going to be having a little bit of a chat about Independence Forum Scotland and the upcoming conference that you've got organised for just a few weeks' time. So we put together a little video just to kind of give folk an idea about the contents of that. So let's just play it. So
Yep.
that was so it's in Perth. It's in the Salutation Hotel. I have to tell you that I spent my Saturday evenings as a 17, 18-year-old in the Salutation Hotel at the disco on a Saturday night. It was the
Wow.
it was the Perth kids, of which I was one, and the young farmers used to come in for it as well.
Oh,
So it was quite something. Yeah. So I'll be there again on this Saturday, the 14th, not for the disco, but for this convention. So we saw a few of I put together the main things that was in the content. So there's a couple of sessions, one about what it means to be a Scot today, another one about well-being economy and presumably how that fears or not interferes, but can help do away with poverty in Scotland. And then there's a plenary session at the end. So do you want to tell us just a little bit about, where did the idea come up for this particular topic? Just tell us a bit about it.
Yeah, the Convention on Scotland's Future is a continuous kind of event, really. We had, as you will recall, because you were there, the opening meeting of the convention in Edinburgh on the 1st of March, when we had a packed programme. We spoke about land, energy and democracy mainly, although there were other things too. And we'll get updates on those this time as well, which is where the continuity comes in. What we also did in Edinburgh in March was we asked the people who were there to fill in a card putting down what their chosen topics might be for future conventions, on the basis that we would do our best to fit in the most popular one, but it might depend to an extent on who was available to head them up. To a certain extent, we have been affected by that this time, but the idea of poverty and I think the well-being economy was in there. That was one of the potential choices, quite high up the list, and it proved to be the one that we really thought we would make the centrepiece of the afternoon this time. So in a sense, it's chosen by convention members, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the same people who chose it will be experiencing the session this time. There will be a wee bit of it's like a sort of overlapping Venn diagram sort of thing. But by the time we get to the end of the second convention, we had 90 folk in Edinburgh, a lot of them from Edinburgh. And this time we have quite a few people signed up from the Perth groups, which I'm very happy about because it's my home turf. And so by the end of this convention, we'll probably have had about 130 people altogether attending one or the other convention. And then when we do another one in Glasgow, sometime in the autumn, we haven't quite got the date fixed yet, we'll have another set of fresh faces. So that means we're sort of getting the discussions going with quite a large number of people. And that's really the idea, to get people to discuss. We gave ourselves a mission statement, which one doesn't wish to read out or anything, but basically it's about uniting everybody with regular discussion, open debate, and importantly, no party politics. And what we're talking about is what's of critical importance to the nation. And we're focusing on Scotland's future and the achievement of meaningful self-determination. I did read that last bit. But it's not, strictly speaking, it's not a constitutional convention. We're not pushing for independence. What we're actually talking about is how to make Scotland better. What sort of Scotland do we see? Our original intention was that we should have a mixture of independent supporters and perhaps people who were sceptical of independence but still wanted to talk about the future of Scotland. I've got to tell you that so far hasn't worked, because anybody who isn't an independent supporter won't touch us with not a barge pole, but you know what I mean. It's very hard to get people in. But if we do build up a track record of having convention meetings in various places throughout Scotland, and assuming the money doesn't run out, and I would just say at this point, we're very grateful for funding from the Scottish Independence Foundation. We certainly were well helped by them for the Edinburgh Convention. I think we might not need them this time, but they've been very useful. And we wouldn't have been able to do it, really, if not for that. And assuming that we can afford it, there will be more to come next year, and they will be in different parts of Scotland, and we do intend to be peripatetic. That's one of the important things, rather than always focusing on the central belt and on the big areas. I probably departed quite away from your original question, but here we are. You can ask another one now, and we'll get back on track.
I mean that's very. I mean, I was quite intrigued by how you described it there. For, that I mean, yes, I was at the one at Edinburgh, and it was very, very good. And then one in Perth, and because that sort of sounds, it sounds as a way of sort of seeding conversations. I mean, even if it is mostly independent supporting people who come, nevertheless, you've then got a sort of cohort, as it were, of active, because I mean, people who will come to this sort of event are going to be active. They'll be doing something in a local group. So that sounds like a really good way of sort of seeding conversations in Perth. Glasgow next time. I mean, hopefully, there'll be Dundee, Aberdeen, Oban.
Absolutely, all sorts of places.
Stornoway, Kirkwall. However we can do it. Some of these places are harder to maybe to organise. But we
might have smaller gatherings in those places if we were to go there. But actually, yes, the Skye and Stornoway have been mentioned, not within the convention circles, but in the sort of regular meetings of the Independence Forum itself. The Independence Forum is kind of three things that the Independence Forum, which is now coming up for 3 years old, was set up to do. The first was to get organisations together. The membership of Independence Forum itself. It consists of organisations, independent supporting organisations, rather than individuals. And it's important that they have their own, if you like, within themselves, their forum. The convention is the public forum where we get all sorts of folk come in, and they will tend to be independent supporters. And not all of them are necessarily as active as all that. I mean, I know from some of the Perth people who have come forward, some of them are prominent in the SNP, but maybe don't do so much with the actual guest hub that's in Perth. Others are really just interested people, and I've maybe seen them at local Commonweal meetings a couple of times, but they're not necessarily strong activists. And that's very good, because it means that maybe we're breaking a little bit out of the bubble. But I mean, it has huge potential. But of course, it's all about resources at the end of the day. And it's also all about people working very hard behind the scenes, and how long you can sustain that. And that's another challenge.
Yeah, indeed. And I mean, thinking back to the Edinburgh one, one of the parts of it was that you could go and be part of a little discussion group, was about energy. And there was a chap there from a local renewable energies company, and he was full of just amazing ideas about how that could be taken forward in Scotland. And then, of course, once you've developed a a better form of dealing with that. He was talking about hydrogen production in particular. You can then that's a skill set, and you can then take that in other countries abroad. So it was really inspiring. Um, and the only downer was he also had to say that the response from in terms of planning and in terms of getting permission to take these things ahead and scale them up was a bit slow from the Scottish government. And that made me, I mean, I'm broadly and supportive of the Scottish government. I think they do a good job with a difficult set of circumstances as regards finance. But it did make, it does, just when you get that insiders
Yes.
you get that insider's view, and you think, God, that must be so frustrating. What could we do to help? So I'm hoping that maybe there'll be something similar come out of some of the topics that we're aiming at here.
Yes. First of all, just quickly to talk about energy, one of the jewels in the crown for the convention has been the formation of this Energy Scotland group. It didn't form because of the convention. It formed after a discussion with Leslie Riddoch, I understand, about what you might call the energy quadrilemma, which is how on earth do you provide a secure, affordable, decarbonised system for Scotland that leaves a legacy for the people of Scotland. And that group around John Proctor and Dick Winchester and Simon Forrest has come together, and now it was about a dozen strong in Edinburgh because they were presenting that afternoon session. And I'm really hopeful that they will develop into a group that does the same thing within the movement, because they are a pro-independence group, as the Scottish Currency Group does for currency.
Yeah.
And maybe somewhere down the line on one of the other topics we discuss, and maybe that could be infrastructure, it could be anything, but that's for another one, because we couldn't get the folk for infrastructure this time. Oops. That the same thing could happen. This time, I think the real one we're focusing on in the afternoon, and we've only got one big topic, although it's got a topic with two strands, isn't it, in the afternoon. One of the reasons for that was I think we probably tried to pack too much into the Edinburgh Convention. We went on about an hour too long, so we're stopping an hour earlier, and we're just going to do a bit more in-depth focus on poverty and the well-being economy. And so what we'll probably do with that is we'll start with poverty. I'm currently working on a briefing paper that effectively I will speak to start with. And I'll be working that out with people who know what they're talking about, because actually when it comes to poverty, I don't really know what I'm talking about. But people like Craig DL, who obviously is such a talented bloke that knows so much about so many things, and you just have to read his weekly Commonweal articles to get that feeling for that. There's Eva Comrie, who is very, very good on the legal aspects of poverty. And we've got Annie Miller from Basic Income Network Scotland, who's going to talk about basic income as a possible thing that we could do even now about poverty. So we'll spend a wee bit of time just going through what, not just poverty as being a shortage of money and you can solve it by giving more money to people, because poverty, the tentacles stretch everywhere and it has such an effect. And I've been speaking to other people such as Leanne Tervitt, who will be helping me construct the piece, and she knows exactly where it goes and what it does, and we'll certainly be getting to hear that. So having done poverty, we'll then look at the well-being economy, which is frequently, and I think correctly, cited as the way out, the way forward for Scotland, that at least gives you a fighting chance of getting poverty down to the level it is in normal countries. And maybe even better than that, and actually providing something that looks after people and planet. Well-being economy is spoken about quite a lot within the independence movement. It's a big, big thing for Believe in Scotland, for example. And we just want to explore, well, what exactly is it and what does it need? Can you just tweak the economy as it is and just be a bit nicer to people? I don't think you can. Do you need something that's radically different in outlook, possibly far more redistributive, and possibly getting away from the sort of neo-capitalist model altogether? So we'll be exploring that and seeing what people think of it. I mean, the convention is a great educational tool, but it's not top-down education. It's education by discussion, both with people who know what they're talking about and also with your peers. So I expect that to be quite a fascinating one. And then we move on to the panel discussion. And I'm hoping that the table discussions beforehand come up with some questions for the panel on the wellbeing economy. We'll have Craig and Eva, as I've just mentioned, but on the panel we'll also have Jim Osborne, who writes such great articles on a series now on the wellbeing economy and other things for the National. He's part of the Scottish Currency Group.
Yeah,
He'll be joining us for the afternoon. And we've got Dave Thompson, who is just a wise old head, a great generalist.
Yeah, indeed.
And he will say sensible things. He's with Christians for Independence, one of the stalwarts of IFS itself. So that should be an excellent session. And the next thing we have to do is to get our audience, and we're building that. We're gradually getting people to sign up.
Yeah, that's good, and hopefully when we put this little video out, that'll help a bit as well. So one thing I was going to ask you, I mean, maybe you've already covered this, but we'll just touch back into it because one or two people have said to me, and I've noticed it myself at these events, that it's kind of the same people that you keep on bumping into them, and now that in itself is not necessarily a bad thing, but it's maybe a bit of a limiting thing, and you've already said, the plans are to move this around and have it happening in different parts of Scotland, so that will obviously help someone who's maybe just not so able to get in a bus or a train and get themselves up to Perth, might be at the Glasgow one or whatever. But, is that the kind of thing you notice yourself? It's a sort of a moving feast of the same sort of folk?
Well, certainly at local level. It's a perennial problem everywhere within the movement, isn't it? And you've got the same people running around in ever decreasing circles, trying to keep things going, keep the plate spinning, and maybe start extra things up, because the mass movement of 2014, for very good reasons, many folk who were part of that journey have stood back a wee bit. It might be because of age, it might be illness, it might be that they just don't see a way in which we can do this in the foreseeable future. And that is a huge problem for the Yes movement. There are some things going on that may be able to tackle that, but to be honest, we have to try anything and everything to break that logjam. Or maybe those folk who are stepping back just have other things to get on with in their lives, and that's perfectly all right. So there's kind of an inevitability 11 years down the line that there will be a smaller knot of people who are keeping it going as a sort of pilot light, really. And that's important, that the pilot light is on. But it's important also that you're not just engaging in a talking shop, but that you're trying to build something and working towards something that might bring people back when the time is right, and giving them something to argue on, and some factual things about what's possible and what's not possible. That's quite important, because you don't want to be doing pipe dreams, but something they can buy into, a vision of an independent Scotland that they will want to strive for when they get the chance to campaign properly for it.
Yes, indeed. So it's sort of, I mean, and also, the sort of general title of the convention is, on Scotland's future, and I suppose that's the kind of way to do it, isn't it? Let's not, we don't need to dwell on the past. We can learn lessons from the past, but not that we don't need to define ourselves by the past. We can got this chance that we can create our own future. So that you'd think that would draw people in. I mean, what I noticed, and I mean, I noticed this in a wee get together I was at just the other day, and everyone there was my age or older, so we're talking late 60s, 70s, something like that. And I think, if at this next meeting, if there's a chance to put down what would you like to talk about at a future meeting, I'd probably put down something about how do we get young people to come and engage with this, because we know they support Scottish independence, far more than my age group do, although my age group's kind of swinging round very, very slowly. But you don't tend to see very many of them at these meetings. And, okay, so a Saturday afternoon, probably have got better things to do. But on the other hand, it would make a difference, wouldn't it, to have a bit of a younger cohort there?
That is true. And this is a thing we talk about all the time. And to a certain extent, it's incumbent upon us to go to them rather than incumbent upon them to come
I
to
think,
us.
yeah, I think that's true.
Um, I would have to say that when I was in my 20s, I didn't go out of my way to associate with a load of old codgers like us. So, that's why it's
Fair
incumbent on
enough.
us
Yeah,
to
yeah,
go to them. And I think our main concern is keeping them interested enough in there being a possibility of doing something better that they will vote.
yeah,
Because my main issue potentially with young people is they're not as likely to vote as older
yeah,
people are.
yeah,
And in terms of what they support, absolutely, if you were to ask them about it, we're talking about 65% plus, and in some
yeah,
age groups,
yeah,
even higher. There's no doubt because they haven't really had the same exposure to the Scottish cringe as those of us who are older have. I was very cringy in the 1970s when I was in my teens. I would go into school debates talking about how hellish the place was because the reason that was it was everywhere even then. I mean, it's still everywhere in Reporting Scotland if you look at it now. So yeah. How do we do it? That's the question. Well, if we're going to go to them, we have to learn to use stuff like TikTok and
yeah,
do it in an
yeah,
engaging.
yeah, yeah,
Here's an old person falling over and sitting on a pork pie. No, no, just no, being witty and persuasive and just something they want to see and something that will pique their interest. I
yeah,
don't really think at this point we can go much further than that, but I will say that I expect that if there is at any point a democratic event that's going to happen that will make the difference, potentially, I think they will appear and they will be part of that campaign
yeah.
because there will be an end point that it will come to. And you're not signing your life away for the unforeseeable future. So I'm fairly optimistic on that score. But yeah, we need to be more creative about how we make that approach, I think.
Yeah, yeah, and maybe I mean that they were. That's true. Actually, they were very active in the referendum. RIC in particular, who tended to have younger people involved, did an absolutely fantastic job during the referendum campaign. And I mean, we haven't mentioned so far the other the other kind of discussion group that's going to happen, which is about what does it mean to be a Scot today? I
Ah,
mean,
yeah.
maybe that kind of maybe exploring that's also a way to, to think about, well, what does it mean? What would it mean to be a young Scot today? Because it's their future, isn't it? I mean, if we all work
Yeah.
together to get independence, basically, it's kind of like, you and me, maybe not like immediately, but eventually it gets handed to them. It gets
Yeah.
handed to their generation, which
I
is,
think that's absolutely right. And, they're very much part of the Scottish culture as it develops. Overwhelmingly, that's young people. And if you were to go to one of the Believe in Scotland, Creating Scotland events, okay, there's a variety, not in the audience, but on stage,
yeah,
there's a variety of people. And you've got Alistair Heather bouncing about and being, well, he's probably not, oh, he's probably in his 30s, but he feels useful. And certainly the last one that I was at in Dundee, when I got to at one stage to be up. I was one of the oldest people up on stage at any point because I was holding up a placard with the words for people to sing. I didn't mean that, but Leslie dragged me up onto stage, and that was that. But anyway, young people were to the fore there, and so yes. But culture, um, we always like to do something. I say always. This is the second time of asking, but something fairly cultural in the morning because culture is a huge part of becoming independent. I think Leslie Riddick and probably Gordon McIntyre Kemp will tell you that no country ever became independent that didn't concentrate on culture. And Gordon would go further and say, you really shouldn't be talking about politics. You should just be talking about, well, he doesn't say that, but more emphasis on culture. And so in Edinburgh, we started with Alistair McIntosh talking about the roots and vision of a nation. That was a wee bit high level, and it was a wee bit different for folks. And I think that went down very well. But we want to change it very slightly this time. So this one will be more immersive. We've got Stuart McHardy, who's
yeah,
really noted in the
really
field. I
good.
mean,
Yeah,
38 books on various topics. Roger Emerson seems to be there seems to be a bit of a double act these days. Roger's an architect and just wrote a book, or just had published a book called 100 Great Scottish Buildings, or words to that effect. Came out with Luath Press just the other day. And so they'll do a piece on what it is to be Scottish. And of course, it's important that we take the inclusive. It doesn't matter where you started out.
Sure.
If you're
Yeah.
here now,
You're
you're
here
a
now.
Scot.
Yeah.
And therefore, what stems from that? And then there'll be the chance for people to have a wee discussion around the tables. And hopefully, apart from anything else, it'll be fun and a bit of an icebreaker, because that's quite important at the start of a convention. But also, people will take something from it, and it'll be a positive thing leading into the rest of the day.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'll tell you, I'm really looking forward to it. Like I say, I did enjoy the last one. I'm looking forward to this, and it's great that you and I'm sure there's others are doing all that behind the scenes kind of effort to make it all happen. So thanks for that, and yeah, we'll see you on Saturday, the 14th of June.
Saturday, the 14th of June, Salutation Hotel. Link in various places, including to the National of Monday, the 26th of May.
Yep. Good. Well, thank you very much for coming on. It's really been great. It's really been good talking to you. No doubt see you there.
We'll see you there. Thanks very much, Marlene. Yeah. Cheers for now.
Great. So once again, William, thanks so much for coming on. It was really good to hear some more about the thinking of what's on Saturday, the 14th of June in Perth at the next convention. And it was also good to hear a bit about the approach IFS is taking to these events, and the outcomes and aims that it's trying to achieve. So there's a link to the IFS website where you can register for the event, and remember, it's all free, which is great. You're a big help. I'll just play the little video we did to remind you again about the program for the event, and hopefully see some of you there.
Thanks for listening, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that. If you want to make sure you're following us and subscribe to us, then you get notified every time we put something new out, so you don't miss anything. That would be great. Also, you can click the little bell if you're watching on YouTube.
And sign up for our mailing list. You can do that from the website, and we always send one out at the beginning of each month to tell you what's happening. Last but not least, you can buy us a coffee on coffee.com.